All right, welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show. I have to get myself an intro or something. Sorry, I'm reaching for my tea. We're going to talk today about Dr. Seuss. I can't help myself. Also, ethnic studies. Have you heard of this? And some people are saying it's the revenge of the gods. And also critical race theory, as well as I have a guest coming on who is going to talk about his new book, Cooperation and Coercion, how busybodies became busy bullies. So that'll be kind of interesting. And my phone's going, boy, there's just a lot of stuff going on. This is going to be a bit of a messy show. I have a feeling it's just the way it is. Okay. But without further ado, let's get going. It's funny because I listen to other podcasts and stuff, and I'm always, well, I'm not always, I'm often disappointed because people take so long to get to the meat of what they want to talk about. And I know that I kind of hurry us along, but I'm impatient to get to what we're talking about. Um, so the Dr. Seuss thing, they're taking that. Here's another great example, and I hate this, frankly. Another good example of why of me being on the same side as the left in this instance. So I'm not terribly in favor of schools opening. I think kids are better off outside the institution, and we're going to get into more of that in just a bit. But also, I'm not a fan of Dr. Seuss. I'm sorry. I get okay. Um, Cat in the Hat. I found it to be insipid. I don't like the story of these ne'er do wells, these bad influences coming into the home when the mother's not there and creating all this havoc. And okay, they clean up after the fact or something, but I still don't like it. And then the Grinch was actually kind of a nice story, but I'll tell you my problem with Dr. Seuss. But first, let me talk about Ted Cruz reading Green Eggs and Ham during his filibuster in Congress. I found that very disappointing. Let's just say disappointing, because Dr. Seuss came about when the schools instituted whole word reading. Whole word reading was a disaster. And but before I get to the disaster, they decided they wanted to sell more books. So they made a list. They wanted to sell more books, so they needed a new strategy for teaching that would make all of the old books invalid. And so they went and they decided they were going to implement whole word reading without testing it, because they don't care about the children. They don't care that your children, in fact, they would prefer that the children were not educated. Okay. I know this is, it's funny because I'm getting more and more strident the more I delve into this stuff. And on the one hand, you go, well, she's really going down the rabbit hole. But on the other hand, no, I'm digging stuff up, and then I see new things as the dust settles. There are new strategies, new implementations, new things that I'm discovering as I go, that it's mind-boggling. So whole word reading, you just have to go back and look a little bit at the history of education. Just Google. Well, actually, I don't even know what Google's going to show you these days, but whole word reading. So the idea was they were going to teach these students to read entire words instead of phonics, which would be sounding out the words. Now, there are a couple of problems with that. One, obviously, you're limiting the child to very few words. Yeah, sure, he can learn 200, but he can't learn 2,000. Or if he can learn 2,000, he can't learn 20,000. But if you read phonetically, you can figure out any word. You don't have to have it memorized. Disaster. Anyway, so they came up with a list: dog, log, frog, cat, hat, bat, sat, right? They had a whole list of words, and they went to this guy, Dr. Seuss, and they said, we'd like you to write some books so that we can sell the new books in schools. And he looked at the list and he said, well, I'm not going to be able to make any sense of it unless I do rhymes. So he put together a bunch of rhymes. That's how we got Cat in the Hat. The other thing that I'm not thrilled with Dr. Seuss about is he was a leftist. Okay, I'll tell you a quick story. I got to get my office set up. It's getting there. I'm getting there. It's just a bit slow going because there are a lot of moving things. Anyway, shoot, I was going to tell you a quick story. What was the movie that they did with the Lorax? The Lorax. The Lorax is this little creature, and these humans come in to his sort of territory, and they need to use the trees to create these sweaters, and it disenfranchises the poor little Lorax, who is an animal. And the whole book is basically about how bad humans are because they terraform and they destroy the environment, which is patently untrue. The wealthier a community is, the nicer the environment. The poorer the community is, the more disastrous the environment. And so, of course, environmentalism stands abjectly opposed to reality. And so the Lorax, so they were going to show the Lorax. They did a whole Lorax thing at our little school when my kids were in kindergarten, when I had one child in kindergarten, obviously. And I found out about it, and they were going to show the movie. And so I taught my kids sort of the opposite of the lesson of the Lorax. And so when they showed the movie, my kids were already galvanized. And the one thing so we had a little dog, and we used to say to the little dog, Dodo, go Dodo. Dodo in French means bedtime. And we would say, go Dodo. And she would go into her little bed area that we could lock to keep her safe and to keep her secure when we were leaving the house and stuff like that. And so I said to my kids, so what are we going to say to Mr. Lorax? And they said, go Dodo. So anyway, this is this whole tirade that I'm on right now is based on this this article. I think it's off a City Journal. Name a great civilization created by progressive leftists. You have 5 seconds. I'll wait. No, I won't wait. We all know there are no great civilizations created by leftists. Leftists only destroy. That's what they do. They destroy great civilizations. The article starts this way: to defeat woke tyrants, the rest of us must treat them like the monsters they are. That's the headline on a New York Post op-ed from University of Tennessee law professor Glenn Reynolds, who writes of contemporary cancel culture this: it's happening not because anybody voted for it, but because a small but determined and vicious minority is bullying people to go along, relying on cowardice and groupthink to achieve ends that could never really happen, that could never happen via majority vote. Never happen via vote. That's why you've been completely disenfranchised now, and Facebook and Google, YouTube are deciding for you what you want to watch, what you would like to see, what you would like to read, who you would like to follow. You may not follow Donald Trump. You may not, because he cannot have a following, and therefore you may not choose to follow him. That could never happen via majority vote. How do you think Dr. Seuss would have done in a referendum? Well, sadly, I think that a lot of misguided people would have said, we love Dr. Seuss. We have to keep Dr. Seuss. I think it's absurd. I encourage you not to read nonsense to your children. There are a few exceptions to the Dr. Seuss sort of rule that I have. Horton Hears a Who is a pro-life message that's very interesting. And it's funny because it's a pro-diversity message, but without being anti-Christian. And the same kind of thing with the Grinch Who Stole Christmas. So I'm not just entirely against Dr. Seuss. It's just that I'm not the hugest fan of Dr. Seuss. More than 1.2 million copies of stories by the late children's author sold in the first week of March, more than quadruple from the week before. I love it. The left always eats itself. Following the news that his estate was pulling 6 books because of racial and ethnic stereotyping. For days, virtually every book in the top 20 on Amazon's bestseller list was by Dr. Seuss. I just find that hilarious. According to NPD BookScan, which tracks around 85% of retail sales, top sellers weren't even the books being withdrawn. The Cat in the Hat sold more than 100,000 copies. And that's the sad one to me, because I think it's poor role modeling for a book. I don't like it. Maybe, you know what? Change my mind. Write to me. By the way, I love getting your letters. We'll do letters again. Not today. I don't have time. So 100,000 copies compared to just 17,000 the previous week. Green Eggs and Ham, another blithering idiot book, topped 90,000 copies. One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. Are you following me? Do you understand why they are such nonsense? It's because he just had to use those words. And that's what happens. And that's leftism. That's what it does. It boils everything down to ridiculous stupidity. I'm sorry, I haven't had my tea this morning and I just need to have my tea. Historically, Mr. Reynolds is urging more clear and candidly this way. Historically, it's not the good guys who are out burning books and censoring speech. It isn't the caring, empathetic people who try to destroy lives based on something someone said years ago, often while young, often taken out of context. It isn't the good guys who take undisguised glee at the ruining of lives, families, and careers. You know who does these things? Horrible, awful people. And that's what we're seeing, and we are giving them power when we do not stand up against them. And then, oh, you know what? This was off the Wall Street Journal. My bad. I didn't see the author. Dang, I don't have the author here. I'm so sorry. But it is off the Wall Street Journal. So there's another piece of this that I thought was really fascinating. It's a little blurb on Modern Media, and it says this: comedians are struggling to parody Biden. Let's hope this doesn't last. That's according to a Washington Post opinion piece by Richard Zoglin. He's arguing that Biden is the first president in generations who might be impervious to impressionists. He contended that Biden is impregnable to parody. I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous on its face. His voice being too devoid of obvious quirks, and his manner too muted and self-effacing to offer comedians much to work with. Yeah, that's the problem. I'm sorry, are you kidding me? It's very funny. Forget that impregnable to parody poll. The poll that spent the last campaign year jamming fingers. They mean politician. I don't know why they. Anyway, the commentary on this. This is according to Matt Tibby. He wrote, "Forget that the impregnable to parody politician spent the last campaign year jamming fingers in the sternums of voters, challenging them to push-up contests, calling them lying dog-faced pony soldiers, and forgetting what state he was in." Biden, on the day that Zoglin ran his piece in the Washington Post, he couldn't remember the name of his defense secretary, Lloyd Austin. He referred to the Department of Defense as that outfit over there. He checks almost every box as a comic subject. He says inappropriate things. He engages in wacky Inspector Clouseau style physical stunts like biting his wife's finger. He switches back and forth between outbursts of splenetic certainty and total cluelessness. And yet, of course, the wokesters are telling us that he's imperviable, he's impermeable, he's impervious, impenetrable to comedy. He's the most comedic president I think we've ever had. I don't know if there's been one that could have stood up to him.